We're going to look at the Kuba, and this is this Ndop figure. So the Kuba are in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, so now we're down into Central Africa. And in terms of where they kind of sit geographically, I'm going to jump back to this map. We'll come back to that picture just now. But you can see they're kind of inland where the Sankuru and the Kasai rivers sort of come together. And this is a kingdom that was founded in the 16th century by a guy named Shamba. And Shamba traveled to the Congo kingdom and learned a lot of art and technology, got American crops because the Portuguese had been trading here for a long, long time. Went back to the Kuba and was able to establish himself as king. And the Kuba have probably more than any other culture on the continent the most amount of title holders. Almost everyone in town holds a title. And if you're the guy that's coming in and saying, guess what, I'm going to set myself up, I'm going to be king, and you 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 and you, you're all going to have titles, that goes over pretty well when you're trying to establish yourself. So we have this wonderful, long-standing tradition of title holders, and art is what sets aside every individual here. There's a hierarchy in the objects that you have and the objects that you wear. You can see quite easily who the king, the Nyim, is. He's got the most stuff on him. And in terms of our image set, we have a tradition of these figures called Ndop, and scholars have dated these to about 1750. So in round about 1750, there was a single artist who created a series of these, each one representing a past Kuba king. And then from that time on, as the royal line continued, each king would have one of them commissioned for himself. And these are believed to be a soul double of the king, all right? When a new king is installed, the Ndop of his predecessor is involved in that ceremony, and it's believed that the soul of the previous king is residing in this vessel, and it gets transferred over to the current king. Okay? It's also believed that whatever happens to the king happens to the Ndop. It quite literally is his double. There's good evidence that these were often kept with the wives of the king as a way to kind of stimulate fertility. And after the death of one of the Nyim, one of the kings, and after a new king has come and taken the throne, these were also used as grave markers. Okay, so they have an interesting life as objects. Yeah, they're not huge. They're about that big or so.
They wouldn't leave it out in the open.
No, it's not something that would have been kind of exposed or kind of out in public sight. Yeah.
Is King buried then?
Mm-hmm.
And you said a series was done by one artist of the king's past.
Yeah.
So as a new king happens, is there another artist
Yes.
now creating the new ones?
Yeah, and that's the great thing about these, because they're the earliest examples we can pin down to the hand of one artist. That's an anomaly for African art because no one has names, right? But we're able to look at regional styles and we can pick out specific hands within that.
So are you saying that one artist will make all of the ones including the new king and the past one?
The ones from the 1700s.
Yeah.
And then from then on.
Then it was just whoever happened to be a royal artist at that time would make them. So then we get variety with later versions.
And is the last one that they made in the 1960s, is that correct? I want to say I read something like that.
Yeah, I think so, because right now it's King Mbwiki, and he's been in power for decades now. So that would make sense. Yeah.
Do we know why the artist started to do this? Was he commissioned by the king to do this, or?
That's a good question. We don't know exactly why he was commissioned to do it, but we do know the function of these. So very likely it was a way for a current king to kind of garner the wisdom and the essence of the past ruling line to help him be a better ruler at the time. If we break this down in terms of form, very frontal, symmetrical. The arms are really tight. There's a composure, a calmness, a sense of dignity there. There's also this sort of majestic distance that we can see there. Full belly, he's wealthy, takes care of himself, he's healthy, large head, and the earlier examples, the eyes are shaped like cowrie shells. Cowries were currency, and because the king was the most powerful and wealthy person, he would even eat pulverized cowrie shells. It would be like President Obama eating money to show how spectacular and powerful he is. Do you have a...
That's my question, the size of the head, again, is a symbol of...
Yeah. Wisdom, authority, right? So we can talk about those canons of proportion. Yeah.
So for that series, like, were they found in separate grave sites, or were they?
No, they were found collectively.
So they kind of keep them all together?
Yeah. The last thing we'll say about these, actually here, look at that. So you can see the two earlier examples, and then as we move along in time and different hands, different artists are giving different expressions. But we do have a lot of similarities. And in fact, if we look at the faces and the features, they aren't really specific. They aren't supposed to be portraits. Because just like when the king appears with all of his gear on, you see all the gear. You don't see Bob Smith, who's the king. It's the office over the individual. And again, we have the office over the individual here. And the way that we tell which one is which is by the only part that's different. A little symbol in the front. It's called an ibol, I-B-O-L. And each king would come up with his own symbol that would represent him. Among the Kuba, the kings are artists. When a new king comes, he creates his own patterns. And those patterns get put on everything, on carpets, on drums, on outfits, on ceremonial spears, on everything to represent who he is, his specific reign and rule. And we also see that with the symbolism that identifies each of these individuals and tells you something about them.
So was that image on the left the king? The current one?
This one.
The photograph type? No.
That guy? Right here. Yep. Yep. What were you going to ask?
Headdress, whatever. On the statue.
Looks like a what? A book?
Last statue.
Oh, okay. That's called a Shody, S-H-O-D-Y. And that goes back to the one of the founding stories, that the first man sometimes is known as Woot, sometimes as Bloom. It's not necessarily important, but it was this kind of mythical figure, and his sons were, he had two sons that were vying for authority after he was passing on. And the way this one story goes is that all the community came and they were going to kind of vote and figure out who the next king is going to be. And there were so many people there that no one could see the candidates. So what the son of Bloom or Woot, depending on what version you hear, did is he got a garden hoe and he put it on his head.
Got a what?
Like a garden hoe.
Oh.
Put it up on his head, and then all of a sudden everyone could see who he was. And that Shody, that hat, has been now adapted as a symbol of kingship. So, for what it's worth.